to corruption. Nika heading of Vienta production. Say no to corruption. Nika heading of Vienta production.
We have two guests today. First, I'll introduce Mr. Dumisani Mthombeni. He is a lawyer, a former public prosecutor, and a vibrant youth and anti-corruption activist and consultant. He advocates for good and open governance, transparency, accountability, and integrity, and is the founder and managing director of Zero Tolerance Wise Consultancy. His goal is to transform Zimbabwe and Africa into a corruption-free society through education, corruption prevention, and public awareness. He advocates for youth involvement and active participation in development issues. In 2010, he was chosen by Dumisani Mthombeni to represent Zimbabwe at the 13th International Training Course on the Criminal Justice Response to Corruption in Tokyo, Japan. In 2014, he was chosen by Transparency International to attend the Transparency International School on Integrity in Lithuania as the only youth representative for Central and Southern Africa. He has attended international conferences on corruption in Brazil, the Philippines, and Panama. Dumisani believes in the power of youth to change the world and solve world problems. I'd also like to introduce Kundai Takayendesa. He's the founder and CEO at ZimVenues.com, an all-service design, support, and consulting business offering comprehensive internet marketing solutions for the Zimbabwean hospitality industry. He is also the technical director at Hoodridge Marketing, which is focused on helping facilities manage their energy and solve complex power system issues, and also specializes in processing control automation. Kundai holds a Bachelor of Science in Information Technology from Belgium campus IT University in South Africa, and has worked for Delta Corporation and PowerSpeed Electrical as systems development attaché and a systems developer, respectively. And he is currently setting up an ICT solutions division of Hoodridge Marketing. He works hand in hand with Zero Tolerance Wise Consultancy, and will focus on how ICT can be used to reach out to citizens and especially the youth in order to raise awareness about corruption. So thank you very much for joining us, and I will pass the stage to you now.
Good afternoon. Can you all hear me? Is the microphone working? I can't tell.
It should be, is it not up?
Hello?
Well, just turn it in.
Hello. Very good afternoon to you all. Let me start by apologizing for starting rather a bit late. We are still waiting and hoping that one of our panelists, Mary Jane Move from Transparency International, will be here. We're trying to wait for her and to accommodate others who are always latecomers. Nonetheless, it is my honor and privilege to be here today to lead this discussion. It is with the greatest of humility that I welcome you all to this groundbreaking and game-changing discussion on the role of the youth in the fight against corruption. Allow me to first start by acknowledging your presence and thanking each and every one of you for choosing to be here with us today. You could have chosen to be anywhere in the world, but you are here. I am extremely humbled and I thank you all. I will at this juncture ask Mr. Kundai Takayendesa to hit the ground running with his presentation on how ICT can be used in the fight against corruption. We all know that the biggest constituency that relies heavily on the social media platform are the youth. as opposed to any other group. So it is this particular group that we intend to target, that we wish to implore and persuade to be actively involved in the fight against corruption. Mr. Kudai Takandesa, the floor is yours.
A very good afternoon to you all. Well, I'm not too sure as well if you guys can hear me through the mic or straight from my output. But nonetheless, well, as introduced to you, I'm assistant developer by profession and specialized daily in my life with ICT systems and development tools and all that. So forgive me in my presentations because I'm used to speaking to a dumb terminal, which is a computer and not people. But in that regard, what we have, well, to start with in my presentation, what we have to do is break the research question and make sure we all understand what's going on and what we are talking about. What we'll start by defining is, what is ICT? Do people understand what we're talking about when we speak about information technology? Actually. Well, and this is what I'm going to go through with you guys, but I'll throw a quick question to the floor. If anyone can explain what information technology is. Anyone free to tell us from your understanding? Yes, Dave.
I think it's more of relaying information the way we send messages and receive messages. Like for example, back in the day, they used to use phones to send out a message around the village, but now you can send an SMS or send a WhatsApp message or something like that. So it's a generation of moving from the same system to just being able to conduct and to utilize that technology to relay information.
She speaks about relaying information in technological terms, and that's pretty much close, and rather what technology is. But I mean, anyone else for the contribution? Well, from a contribution, what I would actually want to add to that is the fact that technology is a basic implementation of science and knowledge to solve the problem, or invent what she gave us a definition of technology, invent useful tools to solve the problem, right? Now, in this case, we're speaking about corruption, transparency. It's a problem we have that we want to curb through the use of ICTs, engaging the youth in the act of doing so, right? I'll go on next to, well, that's the basic definition of technology. The misuse of public office for personal gains is an act of bribery involving a public servant, and the transfer of tangible resources is the definition of corruption, among many others. ICT is a bit of an algorithmic flowchart system, developed structure, but I'm not really going to go into detail with you guys technically in that aspect. But since we have corruption being formulated, oops, how do I go back to that now? Sorry. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I was basically speaking about corruption itself being formulated into a situation where you've got discretion and monopoly with the subtraction of accountability. And what we want to use, and what we want to implement is ICTs to present that accountability part of it. Yes, that's being. What are we saying in this regard? We want to present and make use of the youth, being the masses of the population in the world, rather, and of course in Zimbabwe. Now, for us to achieve accountability through ICTs, we want to engage youth, and so doing. Where from this chart here, you see that 36.9, this is an average of the age groups, right within what we call youth. A good question will be, what is the definition of youth? in my context and my definition of it and my understanding, I'll put it an age gap of 12 to 35 precisely. And this flow chart, this chart here actually averages the age of active youth on the social medias, technology, speaking about technology, being at 36.9 years, which supports my definition of youth. So now if we have such a traffic on the internet of people being of that age, those are the people we need to use to fight corruption through ICT. Different forms of social platforms you can come across on this on the ICT platform, internet-based platform. We find that 10% of the population starts from the age gap of 12, where I spoke about, to 40%. Yes, 40%. Now if we have to add the difference from 12 to 35 years of age, that computes to 60% of the population of the youth active on social media. How do we suggest or propose that youth be engaged in the fight against corruption? Well, engaging youth is essential for success in keeping corruption. Youth represent a significant portion of the population and are generally more open to change and political transformation since they have less interest in maintaining the status quo. Going back to the charts we presented of the numbers of youths we have. How are we proposing we use youth or engage youth through what? What is the technology do we propose in this regard? Number one, prevention detection. This is where we're using social network analysis and social media analysis tools. For example, you know, lately people, before they do anything stupid, they post on Facebook, MySpace, I'm about to do this, I'm going there, I'm doing all that. This is where we're speaking about prevention detention. When you have a mass population of 10,000 people having seen that plot happening of these guys on this day, they organize to go and do whatever evil act of corruption at a place, we have already made or created a transmission media of having to record corruption issues and plots to an act. Awareness raising comes back to the same state or technique of prevention detection, where in the case of awareness raising, we're saying we can use any medias online, any technological medias. Why? Because in this regard, it's a matter of just having to pass from one person to the other in awareness of what corruption is, what transparency is, what is wrong when it's done. For example, if people are more educated as to the law, they're less vulnerable to unlawful acts or where you work in a social public environment and you're forced to pay where you're not supposed to pay. Having known the law, you will not pay. So this is what we mean by awareness raising. Also, we'll speak about reporting. How do we use and engage the youth in reporting for... Okay, did I just do that again? Sorry, reporting. When one comes across, what do we normally do when we actually hear about corruption? See an act of corruption, see an act of discretion, see an act of, well, so many things we could speak about that are going on, we will go on around in the world lately with corruption. But what are we doing? Who's reporting? Who's telling who? How? Because you don't have a platform to tell and report these issues. What are we speaking about when we speak about reporting? You can use mobile technology. Our SMSs, we can use SMSs as input to report these matters. We have a scenario where you can speak about websites. Going back to the issue of awareness raising, speak through those websites, report the cases of corruption. When you feel that you were not treated properly or you have been made to pay where you're not supposed to pay, you've seen a bribe, take course and whatnot, social medias, online newspapers, those are so many platforms technologically used or based that can be used to do so. Also, we're speaking about promoting ethical attitude. What do we mean by promoting ethical attitude? This is where we engage in the youth by means of pursuing discussions in various online forums. Imagine we convert this into an online forum. You can have that discussion all day, 24/7, during the night, lunchtime, whatever, whenever you wish, and as many times as it will be passed to the mass population. And like in this regard, we had to do it the traditional way, where we're speaking to you in physical presence, which is not what we really want. We want a scenario where we can engage all the youth online, have a forum where we speak about such discussions, and people have a whole population participation in such. And that will be a good step to actually curb the corruption through ICTs by engaging the youth. Transparency. When you speak about transparency, we're asking of people, we want a scenario where information is made public to the people. In this regard, remove an opportunity for discretion by mobilizing youth on websites where information is published. Manually or automatic input would be of help to display that. We may any processes, government transactions, procurement processes, this example, if they are made public to people online, media, social platforms, whatever, of course not social media, but have a system, an integrated system with a centralized database where in fact we have all those transactions being captured and made available to the people and the public. And have youth comment if you have objections to the way a tender was rendered, and or otherwise you will be able to do so open through the use of technology. Of course, having spoken about so many benefits and ways in which we can achieve this being done, there are difficulties and, or rather, complications you face as a nation in so achieving what I've presented before you as solutions to curb the issue of corruption through engaging the youth. Design and management decisions, environmental factors, etc. are some of the factors that determine the impact of corruption in Zimbabwe. It is therefore necessary to point out that introduction of information technology into a system may be strongly rejected by the populace due to fear of loss of jobs. If we have to speak about one-on-one in this room, as we are, if you come across a corrupt officer, you're not going to report about it. Why? Because you're scared of one or two things happening to you, right or wrong? If any of that has to happen, you witness corruption in a work environment, you're not really going to whistleblow about it because you're scared to lose your job. But what are we saying? We engage in you as the youth through ICTs when there's no one who's going to know you're the whistleblower and whatnot. That's an example of how they will be able to help, and you not being scared about it. But of course, there's a difficulties of actually trying to implement the strategy of ICTs through youth in fighting corruption. We'll also speak about redundancy. Redundancy will also define, it's almost the same as loss of jobs, where you're scared of losing your job, being lonely, loneliness, being left alone in the seclusion and all that stuff. Health and safety reasons, yes of course, being beaten up for saying certain things you assumed not to have said, but you have the right to say so. But of course there's a fear that people would come across in such regards. Having spoken about this, therefore proper education is also needed before engaging and exposing youth to digital-based anti-corruption methods. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chitakaindesa. I believe his presentation was short and precise, straight to the point, and very clear for all to understand. We need to utilize ICT in the fight against corruption. Those who are corrupt are heavily relying on technology. We have to be innovative and beat the corrupt in this game. We have 7 questions for him. We will have a question and answer session. I need to introduce to you Mary Jane Nuwe. She has 12 years experience in anti-corruption, democracy, governance, and human rights advocacy. She has worked extensively in the region through Transparency International and other institutions. Mary Jane is increasingly recognized and engaged locally and abroad as a professional speaker and trainer in corruption and governance issues. She has been the executive director of Transparency International Zimbabwe since 2008. Through this position, she has helped shape and direct the vision of the organization. Mary Jane is a Hubert Humphrey Fellow in the Public Policy. She holds a law degree and a master's degree in poverty reduction and development. I present to you Mary Jane Mule. She will deliver a speech. Thank you very much.
I hope it's okay if I speak from here, since I don't have a PowerPoint. Sorry for coming late and missing part of your presentation. The tail end of it I caught, I think was very good. And it's not far from our own thinking along the lines of what young people and the fight against corruption is about. My entry point will be to share that we, as Transparency International Global, maybe let me just first explain who we are for those of you who don't know who we are. Transparency International is a global movement that has 100 chapters across the world, represented in precisely all the continents to varying degrees. There are 18 chapters in Africa, and Transparency International Zimbabwe is one of the oldest. We were established in 1996. The movement itself is 22 years old. And our role has been to put on the center stage of governance and development the issue of corruption, bringing it to the awareness not just of governments, but business leaders as well as communities, which include all demographics, and of course of those demographics, young people are a big constituency. So in our efforts to try and engage young people more and more in the fight against corruption, we did a youth and corruption baseline study that was conducted between 2013 and 2014. We're actually launching the results of that a month from now, which is mid-April. Well, it's actually in April. And that between the ages of 15 and 34, the population is at least 4.7 million, which constitutes 36% of our total population. And that is also the population that is economically active in Zimbabwe, making up 56% of the economically active population, or who should be economically active. The study had the following objectives. It looked at the awareness of young people to corruption issues. It documented the impact of corruption on young people's lives, social, political, economic, as well as their entrepreneurial endeavors. It also evaluated the readiness of young people to act against corruption. It further identified the ideas that young people may have, such as we've had shared in front of us today concerning corruption. 45% of young people interviewed were aware of what corruption is. They had an appreciation at least. 35% said they were uninformed of what corruption is and what it encapsulates, what are the different facets and forms of corruption. The majority of young people who were aware, unfortunately, were only those who had some tertiary education. And we know those make up only 20% of the young people population in Zimbabwe. We also try to measure what holds back, what keeps young people from participating in the fight against corruption initiatives. 20% of the young people spoken to said they view corruption as a very sensitive issue. They fear political censor. And the study also indicated that young people in Zimbabwe are not empowered enough to take a leading role in the fight against corruption. I would add, let alone any other social, economic, political, or governance issue. It also stems, in my view, going further from the study, that there is a lack of understanding amongst the majority of young people why fighting corruption matters. What is the overall impact on issues that young people care about, or issues that young people should care about? Let's count the young people in this room. I'm sure Dumi did a very good job in advertising this workshop, this meeting. But I counted at least 25 young people in this room. And I know a lot of young people come to this center, to the public affairs office. But there's only 25 people in this room. Which for me leads to the question, do young people understand that fighting corruption has an impact on such issues as infrastructure development, which is linked to young people employment, social development, which includes the provision of health, education, housing, water, sanitation, equality for men and women, equal opportunities for all young people, and equal access to goods and services. Do young people care that fighting corruption also has an impact on economic development that is pro-poor, that will take into consideration whether you had a chance to have a good education, a chance to go to a good school, or to coming out of a disadvantaged background? Do young people care about the environment and the impact of corruption on such issues as forestry, as fisheries, on climate change, for example, on extractives, mining, land use management, agriculture? According to our research, despite the rhetoric, young people in agriculture only represent 1% of all active smallholder and large commercial farmers. Do young people care about access to services and goods? When it matters that because you are young you don't have a voice in making a decision or impacting policy on how goods and services are distributed and marketed. Access to justice, access to equal protection in the law. Our first speaker talked about fears that young people have in participating, but that's because of that acknowledgement that there is not equal access in the law and equal access to justice. Access to information, which also touches on the issues of ICT that we've just heard about, which is part of freedoms of expression and freedoms of assembly. These are issues that we at least hope young people care about. And when we say corruption is a cross-cutting issue, we mean precisely that it touches on all those issues. It has a negative impact on all those issues, which in our view implies that young people should care, because you are at that pivotal time in your lives where any of those factors, whether we're talking extractives, we're talking infrastructure, we're talking public procurement, access to public services and goods, these are issues that impact your decisions about where you take your career, where you decide to build a home, start a family, all the issues that are related to your progress and your success. Corruption can be an impediment to all those issues, and young people should care. Your voices should be heard the loudest. The willingness to fight corruption in young people. 75% of young people say they are willing to fight corruption. Young people stated in the study that they would be willing to fight corruption if there's an institutionalized, systemic way in which to go about it. But again, my question is, where do young people fit themselves in? Where do you see yourselves fitting in the value chain of anti-corruption? Where do you find yourselves placed? Where do we count your accountability? Where is the accountability and the responsibility and the integrity of young people? At what point can we measure it and say these are the values young people in Zimbabwe stand for, and when they come together as a united voice and say no to corruption, we know that they are a constituency to be respected and to be counted, because these are the values that they are willing to stand by. All of us have to stand by something. There are values that we all should be willing to rise and stand by. But instead, we see young people being easily swayed one way or the other. We know that we are living in very critical times. We know that the financial resources are an important issue to all of us, young people more so because you are starting out in life. You have aspirations that you are yet to realize, but there are certain things that young people, at least we expect, should be willing to say, I will not take a bribe for this. I will not be fraudulent or convinced to be corrupt over $5,000, over $100, because I am looking to something better, not just for myself, but for those around me. Because corruption is also intergenerational in the sense that it becomes part of a society's culture. It becomes ingrained in the way we think and the way we do things. A lot of the corruption we see in Zimbabwe and lots of parts of the developing world is corruption that is perpetrated because people want ease of doing things, ease of access. But if it's just ease of access just for you because you could afford to pay the $5,000 bribe, how does that help the overall turnaround of the economy and the development of those around you? Even if you were to start your own business, your business will be successful if it is established in a society of people who are equally progressive as you are, people who have access to resources and capital as you are, for them to buy into your business. So if you are the only one who can pay for ease of business, ease of access to goods, to resources to further your business, what about that clientele that you are relying on? So it has a ripple multiplier effect, the results that you get from fighting corruption. And as young people, you are urged, at least we urge you to think about it from a generational perspective, that it is the impact that it has not just on you, but on your children and their children's children. And the impact of fighting corruption in any society, unfortunately, the damage done may have been done in a year, but recouping from that damage, picking up from what has been lost in terms of not just the actual resources, financial resources, infrastructural resources, but the mindsets, the attitudes of a society. That is something that will take a generation. In today's society, a generation is 30 years. So you're looking at least at a cycle of 30 years to recover from what has been lost through corruption. We also look at the impact of gender and corruption. What has been the impact of corruption on young people, especially here we have an interest on what has been the impact of corruption on young women. And we define gendered corruption as the kind of corruption that affects women when they can only access goods and services by offering or being coerced to offer sexual favors, or where they are deprived of said goods and services on account of their sex. So the question is not, did she come and entice me so that I can give her a mining license or give her boarding at the university? It is at that level, when a young woman gets to that level, it's because the corruption has become endemic and systemic, and using her sex to get goods and services is the only way. So this is something that as young people, both men and women, you should also be worried about. Because it means that there isn't equal access. It means that there is a certain percentage of our society that is being deprived. And should we care? Yes, we should care. Because women also make up 52% of this population. We should care that women have access to education, to health, to housing, without feeling intimidated from going forward and using their own intelligence and their resources as young women. And hereby, what I mean by resources, I mean their intellect to access what men can access. So this is something that we should care about as young men and women. We think that if young men and women understood the broader impact of corruption, their voices will be heard. You will use your phone to Twitter about what you experienced, what other people around you are experiencing. You will use your computers, you will use whatever technology is around you. You will talk about it at school, you will talk about it in the workplace. Because you're motivated, you are understanding that all these issues are connected, they are interconnected. Fighting corruption is not divorced from fighting for your right to have a dignified life. A right for your dignity as young people, where you are not made to beg for things that are your basic human rights as young people. If you understand your basic human rights as incorporated in our Constitution, you will know that you have access because you have basic rights and you have to defend those rights. But my question is, and I think this is a question most people of my generation have for your generation, what do you care about? What is your level of engagement with those issues that you care about? Because if you care, you will care that corruption is an impediment. It is blocking you from getting to your next step, your next rightful step. And you will care that this is your right as a young person, as a citizen of Zimbabwe, as a citizen of the world. So fighting corruption is not something we do in isolation. It is something that is very ingrained and part and parcel of our socio-economic development rights. And this is something that I will leave for you to think about as young people, to share in your different spaces. How does fighting corruption get me to my next level of development, my next level of success as a young person? Thank you very much.
What are the major points that you have learned from that short video clip? Ladies first. Zaza.
Social sanctions can also be used to fight against corrupt officials. It's us by supporting their corruption, in a way, in a sense, we end up supporting their corruption. And only when we shun them, when we shun their businesses, only then can we say we are fighting their corruption. But when we say Arriba, they continue to be. corrupt.
Thank you. I saw a hand. Was that, yes? You?
Okay, it was in relation again to the social sanctions. Just a clear form of actually stating that people have heard enough of the responses and the activities of the corrupt people, and then maybe the citizens can actually use it as a platform, as an innovative platform to just keep the issue of corruption, building resistance against corruption.
In a very peaceful way, of course. Anyone else? My brother there. You. I thought you wanted to say something.
Not sure.
Colleagues, feel free to
No, my question
make
is
contributions.
for that apartment.
Okay, it was interesting. We'll come to that. Yes?
What I've just observed is that the measures being employed are reactive in a manner. They are not responsive. They are reactive in the sense that you are waiting for things to get bad for us to make a response.
Okay. The gentleman in the red tie at the front.
Thank you very much. I observed that corruption is not natural. That corruption is man-made. Therefore, there is need for human resistance, collective human resistance. We need corruption in the past. And I also learned that corruption is not permanent. If you are corrupt, one day your corrupt activity will catch up with you through facing people's massive sanctions, social sanctions.
Thank you very much. Yes. This is getting better.
Yeah, just out of interest, what context is the...
It's a question.
Yeah.
Okay, oh, sorry. If I may cut you short, we'll get to the question and answer
No,
session.
it's coming directly to the video.
Okay, we'll entertain questions later.
I observed that corruption can be overcome by ordinary citizens, not just powerful individuals or people with power. Ordinary people can fight corruption. That's what I was saying.
Thank you very much. For the sake of time, all your contributions, your observations are spot on. It is important to know and to remember that citizens have the most power in any situation. It is what you and I choose to do with that power. If we choose to be silent, if we choose to do nothing about it, then it is not worth us bemoaning any situation, because we always have the power. If we come together, if we confront the problem, speaking with one voice, we can always overcome whatever challenge that is there, including that of corruption. I will proceed into my speech. In my presentation paper, I will not speak much about the minute details of corruption, but I will mainly appeal and speak to each and every one of you, first as individuals and collectively as the youth. My speech heavily borrows from an article which I wrote sometime last year in my weekly column and was published on the 11th of February 2014 in the Zimbabwe Mail. The youth have a pivotal role to play in the fight against corruption. The paramount aspect is having the right attitude as the youth. Three questions quickly come to mind. One, what type of youth do we have today? Two, what is influencing their behavior? Three, what behavior is expected from the youth in addressing the problem of corruption? Several factors influence how each and every one of us behaves, but ultimately, we all have the power to choose to do either good or evil. What is legal and what is illegal as individuals. One cannot engage in corrupt practices and justify his actions by blaming the economic situation in the country. No matter how hard times may be, we should all behave well. Corruption starts in our minds, how we think as individuals. Asi munhu wese ari kushaya ari corrupt. No, not everyone who is poor is corrupt. Besides, most of the people that engage in corruption involving large sums of money are the rich and well-to-do. Poverty or a lack of employment is therefore never an excuse. It is all about attitude. With the right attitude and mindset, the youth can help this country to achieve greatness. Only the right attitude can take this country forward. It takes an individual to change a nation. A nation which is ideologically bankrupt, a nation without character and a vibrant youth has no future. As we criticize this social ill we call corruption, we must be tactful and mindful of the approach to use. We must be constructive, factual, ascertain facts. Otherwise, false or baseless accusations will erode all the good effort and minimize chances of success. We must be corrective in our approach. Finger pointing is an expression of desperation. Dialogue is the way to go as opposed to parallel monologues. To be effective in our efforts to stamp out corruption, someone should be listening. When criticizing a social ill, you are also communicating. You should always ask yourself this question: is the other side listening? Feedback from the other side is equally important. We should thus avoid a culture of unilateralism in seeking solutions, opt for engagement, collective participation, and sharing of ideas. The holier-than-thou attitude leads to defensive and aggressive behavior from the corrupt, whereas an engaging and all-inclusive approach points to a sense of ownership in the context of problem solving and solution finding. A crusade approach, although spectacular, might be counterproductive at times. But if we bring everyone on board, we increase our chances of attaining the desired results. Women, children, and the youth are arguably the most vulnerable groups affected the most by the negative effects of corruption in Zimbabwe and the world over. Almost all big international organizations, including the United Nations, the World Bank, Transparency International, amongst others, acknowledge and accept that the youth, those aged between 18 and 35, play a pivotal role in the fight against corruption. According to the latest census results officially released in November 2018, the youth constitutes not only the majority of the population, but also the majority of the electorate in Zimbabwe. Despite of their vanguard role, the Zimbabwean youth still remain marginalized in many areas, sometimes through fate, but at times by choice. As an example, Mary Jane pointed out earlier on, there was massive publicization of this program, this discussion session. We went at length to try and invite various stakeholders. I, for one, communicated with most political party youth chairpersons in this country, and they all made an undertaking and promised to send their representatives. Just to give you an example, some were saying we would send 20, but the number in this room will show you and will tell a story that even our politicians, political parties themselves, are not yet ready to work together, and that is counterproductive. As the country's future leaders, it is imperative that they be involved and fully participate in national processes affecting their lives. Never before has there ever been such a great opportunity for young people to engage in the fight against corruption in this country. The world over, there has been an increasing involvement of young people in the fight against corruption. We should not wait and hope to see things changing for the better. Rather, as the youth, we must be assertive and be the drivers of the change we want, because it is our future that is at stake more than anyone else's. It is high time our youth came out of their hiding shell and joined the nation in condemning what is happening across all sectors of the economy, as well as actively participate in supporting and complementing government's efforts in the fight against corruption. Do not wait to be given the responsibility as the youth. Rather, take the responsibility. Do not wait for the door of opportunity to be opened for you by anyone. To be honest, no one will ever open that door of opportunity. Rather, make your own door. Create your own door. Open that door for yourself and lead, take charge in the fight against corruption. Government and the nation at large acknowledges the fact that youth are an integral stakeholder in the problem solving or solution matrix. The views and opinions of the youth are not only important but must also be listened to, considered, and implemented. As youth, we should all stop thinking about today only and start thinking ahead. The writing is on the wall. The game has completely changed. Ordinary Zimbabweans have already buried their political differences and are speaking with one voice in condemning corruption and the corrupt. Young people have the potential to drive real change as today's citizens and tomorrow's leaders. The youth have the potential to take the fight against corruption to the next level. They are very innovative, gifted in many ways, are undoubtedly a hyper-connected bloc that can, through social networking and new social media platforms, add spark to the anti-graft campaign. Without doubt, the youth can be real game changers. Zimbabwean youth have for so many years been divided along political lines. This is the perfect opportunity for the Zimbabwean youth to bury their political differences, unite, speak with one voice, be heard and influence policy making or progress in the fight against corruption at national level. It is my personal and humble suggestion that the President may even consider appointing one or two youths in the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission when the next appointments are done. Zimbabwean youth should emulate the media, which has generally been exposing cases of alleged corruption without fear or favor, as opposed to being polarized. They must depoliticize the issue of corruption and work hard to reduce partisanship. The fight against corruption must never be compromised by political interests. As a nation, we need to invest in the youth, promote corruption prevention and awareness programs that involve the youth. This can also be achieved through the introduction of corruption prevention awareness in the curriculum in all learning institutions, especially in colleges and universities across the country. The UNODC Executive Director, Yuri Fetotov, once said, "It is only through the education of the young today that we can raise awareness of the detrimental effects of corruption among the leaders of tomorrow." Any government initiatives to fight corruption are most likely to fail if the youth are not involved and are not afforded the space to meaningfully participate in the process. Our voices and ideas as the youth can be of great value in the fight against corruption. IACC Council has since resolved that at the 16th International Anti-Corruption Conference to be held this year, sometime later in Malaysia, the youth are definitely going to be allocated a special plenary session. Zimbabwean youth must claim their spot. They too have a very big, if not a bigger part to play in this fight. The youth can bring to the table fresh ideas and are a vibrant lot that can reignite hope. The youth have the power and the voice to demand that the government revisits its priorities and prioritize fighting corruption in its agenda for 2015 going forward. It is time to wake up and act. Let us show the nation that we are ready to stand together behind the government's policy against corruption. Last year on 7 February 2014, the then ZANU-PF National Chairperson Simon Kayamona urged the Zimbabwean youth to take action against corruption while addressing guests at a 21st February movement fundraising dinner in Harare. He was quoted on Star FM radio on Saturday the 8th of February 2014 to have said, open quotes, "You don't reap where you did not sow." And the President has been on record calling us to answer for our actions, combat corruption and promote political integrity or perish. We are not going to allow ourselves to perish. We have to correct what is wrong and correct it thoroughly. And the youth must take a lead. When we squander your future and you keep quiet, then we shall squander you, and that should not be allowed to happen. Show us leadership at your level and you don't show us leadership at your level that you don't accept things which are negative. Close quote. The United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon told a youth forum at a UN forum headquarters in New York that, open quotes, this generation of young people, the largest the world has ever seen, has a historic opportunity to end poverty, combat climate change, create jobs, and fight injustice. Close quote. He said this as he called on the participants to get involved in shaping a future sustainable development agenda. Today, there are 1.8 billion young people, representing 1/4 of the world's population. The Secretary General said that it is time now to see this huge cohort as a force of change that harbors the ingenuity and creativity to help solve the world's most daunting challenges. 2015 is not just an ordinary year. It is not just another year. It is a chance to change the course of history, Mr. Ban said, as he emphasized that this is the first generation with the potential to end poverty and the last generation to avoid worst effects of climate change. It has often been argued that corruption is hurting today's youth the most. According to Transparency International, youths have not been spared in corruption, where in some cases during electoral periods they have been used by unscrupulous politicians to perpetuate acts of violence in exchange for money. Does nothing about corruption. 20 years from now, we will still be paying a very high price for that. Worse still, we would have caused our children to suffer irreparable prejudice. Why? Simply because we chose not to act. At the recently held 21st February movement celebrations held in Victoria Falls on 28 February 2015, President Mugabe implored the youth to lead the fight against corruption. Amongst other things, he said, open quotes, "And our youth, believe in yourself, Some of our investors, they want to come and invest. They get into a ministry, talk to a minister. Minister, what? For me to take you to my president, kunenge kuchidiwa mari akati yokubatsira party. Those things are happening and I am sure you know them. Expose them, don't be quiet. The youth must expose them. And in doing so, you are being revolutionary, supporting the revolution. Africa's population has been defined as a youthful population, and the scenario in our country testifies to that. And yet young people are among the victims of corruption. Because the government has recognized the important role played by the youth in development and nation building, Parliament has now ratified the Africa Youth Charter, as well as reviewing the National Youth Policy. However, the youth should take advocacy and conscious action for behavioral change. They should shun all immoral and life-destroying behavior and conduct. Corruption should be avoided. Our youth should be responsible and disciplined, in addition to having ambitions to do great things for nation and their families. Without discipline, surely our youth will be doomed. We want to see moral empowerment advocacy. Close quote. At the same forum, sorry, let me just skip this. My brother, one Ralph Obonyo, who is a very active youth activist the world over and a UN ambassador, once said, and I quote, "I believe that youth are part of the solution, not the problem." Close quote. It's high time we started thinking beyond the challenges of today and started creating the future we want today. Do not wait to be given the responsibility. Like I said earlier on, take that responsibility and act. Show leadership qualities and sacrifice and strive to help improve the lives of the ordinary Zimbabweans. The youth have the power to change the world. We should not allow our leaders to divide us. Yes, we may have different political party affiliations and preferences. It is respected. But we should always be united by the spirit of togetherness, for we are the youth and the future. What is the point of being young if you are not going to take responsibility to make things right? I wonder. It is my job, it is your job, it is our collective responsibility to be that responsible, to solve today's world challenges and problems like corruption through innovative, fresh ideas. Have you ever asked yourself why you were born between 1980 and 1997? Why did you choose to be here today and not anywhere else in the world? It is because you and I have a God-given responsibility to help our country and our people, especially ordinary Zimbabweans, through eradication of corruption. It is why we are here. But the question is, how many of us are pulling their weight? Even better still, why are some of us not participating in the fight against corruption? Our ideal youth representative should be daring and should be prepared to tackle the current problem of corruption that we are facing. Do not underestimate what is happening today. We may be few, but this is something that is very big. This is the start of something that will and can only keep getting bigger and better. Inasmuch as a husband is heavily dependable on his wife for support, counsel, etc., every country, including ours, requires a dependable, vibrant, responsible and astute youth which should stand out and distinguish itself as the vanguard for a better tomorrow. The youth must identify all the challenges bedeviling the world and our society, be courageous to correct the wrong, stand up for what is right. Every Zimbabwean youth must have the sense of patriotism which requires undying love, sacrifice and loyalty to our country and its people. Responsible citizens who jealously guard and advance the interests of the country and its people as opposed to individualistic self-serving interests. We should not sheepishly be blind followers of political party ideologies and positions. Rather, we should assist our different political parties and leadership across the board by providing them with constructive criticism whenever and if ever such is necessary. Some amongst us have been conditioned to simply oppose everything that either comes from ZANU-PF or the MDCT, MDC Renewal, United MDC, you name it, as an example, just for the sake of opposing, regardless of how good or constructive the idea or a proposal may be. We must grow out of such tendencies, show maturity and be progressive elements. Be passionate about whatever you do. Never give up. Let us be tolerant of each other, and especially our different political opinions. We need principled, morally upright, and an honest crop of youth, one that will not be corrupted by materialistic desires. To the youth, I want to end by saying, do not be complacent and indifferent. Start caring about your interests and your future. When you start caring, start showing that you care. It is my fervent hope that today's discussion will be extremely rewarding, productive, and will set the tone for youth collaboration and active involvement in the fight against corruption. As the youth, we should not let the corrupt get away with it, irrespective of political affiliation. The bigger they are, the harder they must fall. This platform is nothing more than a way to invite young people to get involved on the real issues that matter to them. Arguably, the biggest challenge bedeviling not just our country but the world over, corruption. I hope at the end of the program we will come up with suggestions and recommendations on how we can collaborate with each other and strengthen our efforts to confront and combat corruption, as well as create a better and brighter future for ourselves, our children, families, society, and this country at large. Thank you very much for your attention. Don't you think I deserve better? I know it was rather long, but better take the opportunity we have and relay the message than rush things and leave you and allow you to leave this place empty-handed. If we have any amongst you who have questions, my brother there said he had a question. Yes.
Yes, my question is, yes, it's an interesting chapter you're talking about, but where do you report these matters? And what do you do when they are not attended?
Okay. Let me allow Mary Jane to respond to that.
Okay, the Zimbabwe setup is that there is the Anti-Corruption Commission of Zimbabwe. Then you have the Zimbabwe Republic Police, which has different units that are all mandated to fight corruption. Then you have the judiciary itself, from the lower courts to the high courts. And I mention this deliberately because those are constitutionally mandated institutions. The attitude that will not benefit us as Zimbabweans is to delegitimize them because of the corruption we see within them. We talked about the issue of accountability. We talked about the issue of young people accountability, but there's also sector accountability. We have to hold those institutions accountable because that is their role and their duty to us as citizens. If police or the Anti-Corruption Commission or the judiciary or any other arm of law enforcement is not doing its job in fighting corruption, it is us as citizenry, as a people who have failed to hold them accountable. Because they are there to serve us. Let's take that as a starting point. There are civil servants, public service civil servants who are there to serve us as citizens. If we don't make sure that these systems are functioning, these institutions are functional, and deliver on their mandate, whose responsibility, or who has failed on their responsibility? It's us as citizens. So, where do you take your case if you have encountered corruption, been a victim, or you have witnessed it? Take it to those institutions and don't let them rest until they do something. But now the problem with us Zimbabweans is we say, oh, they are part of the corrupt, so we can't take our issues to them, and we let the rot get deeper and deeper. But they get paid every day, they wake up every day and get paid to fight that corruption. So we have to hold them accountable to their responsibilities, and they have to be answerable to us as citizens. That is how you turn those institutions around. I think we all know what the role of the police is. If we didn't know about the role of the Anti-Corruption Commission, that is their role. Transparency International Zimbabwe has taken it upon itself to be an in-between between the citizens and those institutions. If you are afraid to take your case, you bring your case to us. We will help you to get your case to the right office, to the right institution, because they have that mandate, a constitutional mandate. And remember, the Constitution of Zimbabwe is the supreme law of the land.
Right, just to add on to that, if you do not have trust in these institutions, first and foremost, she said, we must hold those institutions accountable, report to those institutions, and make a follow-up. But if you lack trust even still, make use of the various social media platforms that are there. Report that case of corruption. Go public. If you witness corruption happening along the highways, you can immediately go on Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, publicize that case of corruption. It will reach to millions of people, and it may be more effective. Yes?
Is there no victimization as you release the corruption issue?
Can you come again?
As you reveal the corruption, is there no victimization with regard to high-profile corruption cases?
Okay, after blowing the whistle. Right. It is obvious that many a times people get victimized for blowing the whistle. That is the reason why we are advocating as corruption fighters for whistleblower protection laws. Zimbabwe is lagging behind when compared to other jurisdictions. We have signed, we have ratified the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. One of the mandatory provisions in the UNCAC is to promulgate and craft within our national laws and instruments whistleblower protection laws and provisions, such that anyone who blows the whistle should be assured of maximum protection. There should never be a situation whereby anyone is victimized or suffers prejudice for having blown the whistle. So as citizens, we need to push our government, we need to push our legislators to craft such progressive laws and provisions so that we carry this fight forward.
Thank you for that statement about the whistleblower. And I should also come back to what everyone was saying here, that it's up to the youth. Look, if there is no protection within like the whistleblower entity, the whole craft of whistleblower, we cannot come out. You understand? We have no protection. It's always going to be victimization. I am not trying to judge anybody here, but we just need to understand that as much as you're telling us this information, it is very good, it's very productive, but there is still other steps that we need before we can come to the point of saying we're going to reveal such information. And another thing as well, my point is on the question on corruption. Corruption has been there since God knows when, and it has been an issue for many countries. I believe there's 97% corruption all over the world, 97% of countries all over the world who are still trying to fight corruption. Who is the 3%? And how have they managed to survive or fight against corruption? Because we are getting many methods, but it seems like there's some hindering factors in each and every method that comes up, and we are not getting solutions to how to end corruption.
Okay, the 3%, I would say, according to the corruption perception index, would be Denmark, Norway, and New Zealand. That's not to say there's not corruption in those countries. But again, I don't think that you stop fighting crime because crime has existed since the creation of mankind. Murder has existed from the first family, if you believe in the Bible, Abel and Cain. So you can't say, oh, it's always existed. So what can we do about it? But at the same time, the new methods you talk about are not worthless in themselves, because in countries where there is the political will, not just from the leadership, but also from the citizens, to back up those methods, things do change. To a considerably notable extent, where you start to see that at least those important institutions of governance, of development, start to move. Clear examples around us, not going very far. It's happening in Zambia. It's happening in Malawi. It's happening in Botswana. Let's not even take examples far off. Because citizens take a responsibility. Fighting corruption is not about you being the whodunit and running around looking for the corrupt. We are not asking you to be private detectives. We are asking you to even take the preventive measures of making sure that systems that mitigate against corruption work, institutions that are mandated to fight corruption work, the oversight bodies. Here we're talking about your parliaments, that they also are functional. Your regulatory bodies, that they are functional. It is our role as citizens to make sure that they function. So it is not us saying to you, be private detectives and all go out there and hunt for the corruption. That is not your role. That is the role of the police. That is the role of the Anti-Corruption Commission. Your role is to put fire under their bellies to make sure they do their job. To hold them accountable to their constitutional mandates. That is your role. So it is not to put your lives in danger. This is not what this discussion is about. It's not saying put your lives in danger.
Okay, I have a question for Miss Mary Jane from Transparency International. I'm pretty sure you're aware of Zimbabwe's got more than 6,000 high schools. And
Sorry, it's what, 6,000?
yeah, more than 6,000. High schools.
Or high schools.
Okay. We believe information dissemination, it has to start from the grassroots. So what have you done so far to just educate the youth, those who are actually getting maybe into tertiary education and those who are actually getting maybe into the labor force? What can they actually, what have you done to just give them information in relation to the issue of corruption and how they can approach maybe again the issues related to corruption, maybe to the police, etc., etc. So what, as an organization, what have you done so far in relation to that?
What we have done since 2009, we've been working through the school system from ages 6 to 18. That's the age group we chose to focus on. But again, we are a civil society group. It's about resources. I don't even think that the number of schools that we are accessing represents, you said 6,000 schools. I don't even think it represents even a tenth of that, because we can only do as far as our resources can allow us. But we've made that part of our responsibility to impart values. Our approach has been about imparting a different value system to young people. So we are, again, as I said to the earlier question, we are not saying 6-year-olds should go hunting out the corrupt. 12-year-olds should go pinpointing their headmasters and headmistresses for corruption. But we are trying to inculcate a different value system. Whether we're talking to the younger kids, we're not even talking about big issues like integrity and accountability. We are talking about honesty and responsibility. We break down the language. What is being honest? What is being responsible? Then as we get to the older kids, then we talk about the issues of ethics and accountability and integrity and what that means in the system, in you as individuals, and what part young people can play. So, and in the schools that we've been participating in, young people are very responsive. They feel excited about being given an opportunity to take part. And this is the role that we would hope can be rolled out as other schools also learn from the ones that we have had an opportunity to participate with or to collaborate with. And of course, if we had more resources, we'd do more. But I'll be honest to say we are not touching even a tenth because we don't have adequate resources for that.
I just wanted to, from the comment, from the general presentations, we are seeing that we as the youths, we are kind of not taking the responsibility to say we also are involved in this thing. If you said you are fond of a company, you are fond of a company, it means we have also youths who are in influential positions. What are they doing? Are they also, are they also not involved in this in corruption? There is a tendency of just portraying corruption as a problem that's only found in older people or politicians. That's not the case. We have combi drivers with these who are involved in this thing every day. So, we need to take responsibility as the youths. We also need to tackle this thing. What are the causes? We are not really looking what are the root causes of corruption in the society, in our current society. What are the values? What are the, as youth, as a country or as citizens of this country, what are our aspirations and what are those aspirations, what are the roles that those aspirations are playing in fueling this thing? If you look closely, we are turning into a market society, I would say. We are so much, into these material things. I need to get a car, I need to get a house, and when the resources are not there, we tend to get into, we find other ways which are not vicious to get these things. And this is what has been fueling corruption. From the views, the aspirations that we have, we need to tackle that. I'm very impressed. They said they are now going to the kids, 6-year-olds, trying to teach them what are the values that we should really aspire to acquire in life from that tender age. I think that's the right approach. just take it.
Thank you very much. Just to sum up, you were very right to say it is not only the elderly, those who are beyond the age of 35 who are engaged in corrupt practices. Corruption cuts across all sectors. You will find even school-going kids cheating in exams from as early as grade 1. It's part of corruption within the education system. You want to pass through corrupt means. It's wrong. As the youth, we are also to blame. We are participating in various corrupt practices. But you are also equally right to say we must inculcate the correct values and moral standards within the children. Catch them young, so they say. But within the society, we must have positive role models. You will find that in our country, we value and celebrate so much individuals who are rich and famous or infamous. But if you try to dig deep how they amassed their wealth, it leaves a very bad taste. Many a times they did not amass their wealth through hard work and labor, but through dubious and suspicious practices. So as a society, we need to emphasize on these values. We need to change our attitude. Remember, I spoke of attitude. We need to push on the youth. Not only the youth, we are just targeting at the youth and speaking of the youth today because we are targeting you as the stakeholder before us. But it is not the responsibility of the youth alone to fight corruption. It requires a shared and collective responsibility, which involves all stakeholders, from government, the legislature, the media, citizens, women. All of us, we should play a role in the fight against corruption. Thank you very much for attending.
Say no to corruption, Kaedi no violenta production. Say no to corruption, Kaedi no violenta production.